we've been working on task and scheduling for quite some time. Um, you know, so if you're brand new to zInspector, please be sure to watch either like the zInspector 101 or our new Z Assistant kind of webinars, or you could also go on there and schedule a demo training session. You can do as many of those as you want and help you kind of get set up. Okay. But this year we're still rolling out our brand new kind of website called, it's our dashboard website. The existing website is still there, but you can start seeing dashboard. But more and more features are all coming up on that. Okay. So that's where you're going to see, most of the new things that we're developing. That's going to be our platform for adding various AI tools, and everything else will be coming up on there. We had a webinar about a month ago on the dashboard, kind of giving an overview of what it does. Okay, so you can see, you might want to go back and see that one for reference. Then we had another webinar, kind of this kind of advanced reporting, and it was really on California compliance, but it is definitely applicable to anybody. We really kind of phrase that one. So like we went through, let's say your move-in inspections and things like that, and kind of went through and said, here's all the different ways you could do a move-in. Here's whether you're doing the move-in, the tenant's doing the move-in, you want them to remote sign, whatever possible options you wanted for move-ins or move-outs or periodics. We went through all those. So this is kind of a good one. If you're like doing want to step back and look at, say, well, how do you want to operate inspections? And we made some polls in there where we kind of came up with some results, which I thought were really interesting to see how property managers actually did it, in terms of what types of processes they chose. So there's a good one there. And then we've got a series of upcoming webinars, and we're going to talk about those at the end and show you that schedule. All right, so let's kind of start diving in here, and I think one thing with zInspector is that when we and how we designed it at the beginning, I think we're like different than I think pretty much all other software in that you don't need to set up an inspection or on the website or anything like that to do an inspection. You just pick the property and inspect. And when we got started, that was in itself unique, right? How do you be offline without internet and you're just out of property? You could start a move, start a move out, start periodic, start whatever you wanted, where most other things you're going to have to basically be on the website, set it up, schedule it, and so forth. And so it was a unique concept. But and there's still some merit to that. But now what we're trying to do here is the next level is if you really want to assign, let's say, inspections to different people. If you've got a whole move out process and you've got everything around your move out that you're trying to coordinate, then how do we do that? And then, and there's all kinds of different task management systems, right? So what do you use and things like that? And we could probably do a whole, you know, uh, web conference just on that, all the different options. You got, whether it's Appfolio or Renfine, or you've got Apply or Lead Simple or whatever that is. And so I think you would get the most benefit if you're going to use kind of our process manager for, basically managing your inspection process. So like if you want steps around your move in or steps around your move out, that's kind of where you're going to get the most benefit from here. And then I think we also do some very unique things on the turnover side. And really when zInspector started, it was from my experience in property management where we were, I was kind of turning 100 homes every 24 hours in a college town, right? And so I kind of so we kind of approach things a little different way. So you could even just use it just for turnover management as well. So at the end of the day, you've got to pick and choose what you're going to use it for and how. But I would kind of, as your company, you don't need to use it for everything, just use it for something kind of very specific, and you can kind of see what that is. All right. So that's how I would approach this. Now, there's all kinds of different views that we've tried to cover some of this in dashboard, but one thing that and we're going to dive into the specifics of a task here coming up, but this is kind of like some of the top level views. So what I really like at a company level, I want to see everything. I don't want a million clicks to go and find what I need. I need to see everything right there. And sometimes for a new user, that's kind of a little bit challenging because like there's so much data at once, right? But then as you get good, that's where you learn how to see a lot of data, how you filter it, how do you apply it, how do you sort it, right? So on our kind of our the new dashboard, we've come up with a bunch of different views. And normally, if you're on any table view on the website, you can quickly toggle between these different views, cards, tables, this, that, the same data in just kind of a different graphical format within kind of global search and filter options where then you can kind of apply it everywhere. So you're going to see that kind of across the board on our different pages on the new dashboard. And then on the very top level page, let's see on kind of the overview and over here when you click tasks, you can see some real top level statistics. So like we've actually over the last year or so been collecting data and we're collecting it on a daily basis on your account. So you can kind of go in there and see all your properties per day, how many you're managing on a database, how your account is growing. Well, you can see that same stuff like on tasks. You can see here, like, all right, here I've got an approval requested. I've got a bunch of these approval requested tasks kind of growing in here. Someone's delinquent. I can see all this, right? And you could do filters on this and you can look by users, types, so forth. Okay. So this is kind of the top level reporting where you can kind of go in and find kind of what you're looking for. And we're going to be working on a number of various kind of different visualizations and export options and things like that as well. But all of these have already export options to at least like manually export to CSV or an image or anything like that. But there's going to be more coming. Now, let's kind of go in though into a specific task. Okay. So within now each task, there are different things. So like you might think of zInspector as just, okay, I do an inspection. And so that is its thing. But the reality is you need to do many things along with it, right? So you typically there's going to be a scheduling piece. You may have a manager or the assigned contact. You may set a time. And so we're going to, talk about that. And then we try to come up with a very, simple, basically process management tool. So like, how do I make basically simple processes around that? Then how do I got to communicate around that? And for like a simple like move out inspection, you might need to communicate with multiple employees, multiple team members. You need to communicate with the tenant, with the owner, and you want all of those communications in one spot around a move out, but I need to keep all those communications threads still separate. And that is the key what's developed. So as opposed to just a support ticket system, right here, it's really kind of very designed very specifically for property management. And then we have a separate basically section on field management. Okay. So then that's kind of like what's really happening in the field. Like and if you're coordinating your inspections, that's a list of like documents or list of, and typically, the single template, but that move out inspection, that, for example, that you need to go fill out. So that's kind of in what we're going to talk about. So within each task, these are kind of the four main things that we're going to kind of talk about kind of within a task. Okay. And Athena, if I am missing chats or this or that, and you want to interrupt me, please go ahead and do that here as we're going. Okay.
Yes,
I've
absolutely.
let all these AI assistants
Mhm.
accept it. So there's all kinds of alerts coming in there, through there.
We do have a couple of questions. One is we have a question from Jess. Can this be used instead of Asana or other task management software?
Exactly. So this is a great, basically, target replacement for Asana. And so, and just like, we know Asana very well. When we started zInspector the first few years, and even my property management company, beyond that, that's what we use. They use Asana, and this is now a complete replacement for that. Now, there's going to be a lot to do with Apply and Lead Simple. They do all kinds of other things. we want to do a more native integration. I'm going to show you some kind of simple ways again where you could at least do things like trigger things by email. Kind of that's kind of one in particular that we know many people want to do, and we're going to do that. So like, how do you schedule, let's say, a have tenants complete a move-in inspection, triggering it from something like Apply Simple. So we definitely want to support that. And then also people who are looking to basically just get rid of something like Asana and have a more dedicated system. Okay, so that's how we're doing it here. All right. Now, the someone says, "How does a scheduling integrate with Appfolio?" And our tasks do two-way sync with Appfolio, with the Appfolio service tasks, but not everything syncs. We can't do everything. Their API doesn't allow everything, so it's not going to be complete. But we do sync it up as much as possible. Okay. All right. So now, all right. So let's kind of keep going through in here. Okay. And so, all right, so let's kind of this is our scheduling piece. So when you open up any particular task, okay, then the very first section, it's going to be basically, information. And so that's really where you're going to have the task status. So it's like new, in progress, kind of, and there's going to be some customization coming around that. And then the two main ones you're going to have are your managed and assigned contacts. Those are your big ones. Now, the manage is really if you're just kind of creating a task for yourself and you're doing it yourself, then you could just be the manager. If you want to be notified and someone else is doing the work, then you can assign it to somebody else. Okay. So, and then the beauty of that is that both of you then would be notified, so forth from there. Okay. So that's kind of the key of how you're going to use manage and assigned. Now there is a vendor category also. Right now, that's really kind of you're just tracking them and using them externally. So that's kind of an external vendor. We are working on a full vendor app, so that is coming here before long. But right now, the idea is here that if we're signing a vendor here, you might can email them through here, so forth. They can email back, but it's really that they have their own system. Now, there's more coming around that in the future. That's really the top section here is around kind of information scheduling. You can also have all that show up in your calendar appointment. Like if you have a Google Calendar as a direct integration with Google Calendar, you can also use an iCal link and add it to Outlook or something like that as well. Okay. All right. And then we came up here with basically our process and to-dos. And kind of the first motivation was just a simple checklist. I just wanted a checklist of things that I could quickly click off. And yes, there's all kinds of things coming. There's automations, there's so forth. But at the end of the day, I still need something sometimes. I still am going to have people involved for at least certain things. And so I wanted a place for it to be very easy for them to check off. Now, of course, these processes are going to be filled in by default, essentially automatically based on your type. So once you have your default processes, it's all going to be filled out. But the real key, what we wanted to do is that once it's then created, on any individual task, you have complete control. Okay. So you can have your dedicated process for your move out, but if you need to do something specific, like let's say you need to just add a certain item, or you want to add a note, or you want to add something else, then you can just easily modify any one there as you go and just tweak it. So you could add something else, a special to do, a special reminder, or anything like that. So the idea is it gets created with your default setup, but then you can totally change that process to be kind of whatever you want at that moment if you need to. All right. Now let's kind of keep going on through here. Now, we're really starting with basically a to-do list. Okay. So it's a simple kind of, to-dos and little check boxes. But within these kind of this list, we also have all these different types. Okay. And this is where you're going to see more and more things coming to it kind of overall. The list here is basically what's there now. I love just having the note option. You can like just add notes, you can add pictures, you can do this, that. So if you just have a reference thing, some of a screenshot of something, someone sends you a document, any of those things, you can just kind of store anything like that in there. So you have that as a reference. You can also do canned responses. So if you have canned responses or just general emailing, you can just automatically trigger a canned response. And then when you can start getting into some of the kind of, the more kind of sophisticated automations, you could actually have a to-do item to create a new task. So that's typically might be at the end of a process. At the end, you might create a new task and then kind of do that, as well. You can also um, trigger both tenant completed move-in inspections as well as tenant inspections. So you can trigger that from a task, and then that will trigger. And then we have these are kind of these three down here are a little bit different, but they, for instance, we have what's called work order items and document status. And so that's really based on what's happening in the field. So, like in the simple example here, let's say a move out template is required as part of that move out kind of overall task. When that document is completed, that item in your process list will automatically check off as it complete. Okay, so those are some of the examples, and you can kind of pick any one of those different ones to kind of go from there. Okay. All right. Now let's kind of keep going on in here. All right. Now, um, within a when you are creating tasks, okay, you are going to set basically the first part is set the type. Now within any type you have a title, and we use that same structure throughout. Okay, so for instance, it's very similar. We categorize inspections by a type, and our general word for that is an activity, as we call that an activity. That's kind of the category. And then within that, you have a kind of custom title. So like you may have it's the type is move in, but you may want the title to be Texas intake condition form or whatever you want. Okay. And so something similar here with task, we're going to have a general type. And then from there, we're going to basically also have a title. Okay. And so and now you can actually have multiple titles per type and a default. So you could have like maybe move in, and like I'm outside of Sacramento, and in Sacramento, you need one type of process, where in Rancho Cordova, you need a little different types of process. And so you could have different processes. So you would first pick move in, and then you could have different titles as the secondary option. But most people, I think, are going to have a single selection there per type, but that's kind of a possibility. Okay. Um,
We do have a few questions in the chat. We want to pause for a couple of minutes.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, I was just responding to Jess. She's using Rentec Direct, and the question was, can they sync all of their properties to zInspector? Yes, you can sync all of your property data, the bedroom bathroom count, the tenant data. We upload reports into Rentec Direct. We have a two-way API integration. A few more questions. From Robert, is there an ETA on when the vendor app will be ready?
Yeah, our target is June, so it's still a little ways out, but it is in the planning stage, that's for sure. Um, let's see, Hussein asks here, the to-do list of your it will we do create work orders in Rentvine, but this is really kind of an alternative to that. We're not syncing all that information with Rentvine. So if you're going to be coordinating your work orders in Rentvine, you would probably just do that there. Alternatively, if you were just going to be managing your inspections, and you could have the process here, but that information, there's a lot of details in there that we can't send to Rentvine. Okay. Um,
Yes, a copy of the recording will be emailed to everyone.
Yep. And then Rachel asks, so will this automatically send a new tenant a move-in inspection? That is coming, and that is very, very close. That is kind of this structure is how you're going to be doing it. So basically, it will create a move-in task, And then that's going to then automatically trigger the move in, and then that will keep track of all that. So that is coming, that is in progress, but it's still, a couple months or so down the road. But this is the structure that we're going to use to implement that feature. Brian asks for syncing with Buildium. It's very, very close. We're just doing some final testing on it now, so that is coming here shortly. Okay. Um, Work orders to generate to integrate with Rentec Direct. Uh, make that request to Rentec Direct. We don't have that option there. We're not opposed to doing it, but we have a good integration there. It's been there for a long time, but we don't have there. I don't think there's fields options for us to create work orders in Rentec Direct. Okay. Someone asked kind of a Kim asked a question here. If you already have a single unit, and if you on the website on the if there's a clone option there. So if you pull up the property list, you can look at any unit and hit the little clone button, and so you can just kind of replicate that unit. Okay.
There was another question a few minutes ago from Dusty, if we can push or pull.
No, so everything's going to be coming through zInspector. That's kind of how that'll work. Now you can email in and out of like Google or so forth, so you can actually send your emails in there. But zInspector is the way that's keeping track of actually sending it. But you can have copies of everything, like in your Google email and so forth. Okay. All right. Okay. So these are kind of the different types and activities per our process. So so we're still kind of going in through a task. So we first talked about the scheduling. Then we talked about our process, and these are the different types. And then within each, when you're setting a task, you're going to have different basically types of tasks. Okay. And so that's kind of what this list is here. So that's what that is showing. All right. And then this communication section here, there's many, many things on this that's very powerful. Okay. There's going to be another webinar coming up just on that. So you can kind of see that. But we've got a lot of things in there that is very kind of robust and designed exactly for kind of property managers. Okay. So we're going to kind of cover most of the email you know, set up things in a kind of a different webinar, but you can already show it. And we got another slide here on the basics how you can already have it to get started. Okay. All right. So we're getting on down to the next section, and the bottom of a task is what we call field management. Okay. And there's really you're typically going to break that up into two different areas. And the top area kind of, or it's kind of, I think it's called work order items. And that would be the list of things that actually are going to be done at the property. And then the section kind of below that is really the actual documents that you're going to need to fill out. Now, like the simplest example for most of them, if you're going to just use zInspector for, let's say, coordinating your move out inspections, the only required item on here is going to be move out inspection documents. That's it. Okay. So on your move out, you have a move out process, you're going to have a move out document, and that'll be it. But some people might want a secondary document. So you have a move out process, you have your move out inspection, but maybe you want a separate document to document, let's say, the lockbox code that you're installing on the door, something like that, right? You may have something like that where you don't really want that to show up in the move out because you may be sending the move out to the tenant, for example. So that's a kind of a simple example where a process could have multiple documents associated with it. Now, the field work one, usually that's not gonna be in the same one. So, and that's kind of important that how we are setting things up. So we're not gonna have in one task, the move out inspection plus all the move out repair work. Okay. Because that would be really too much. And they really are two different things. So what we do is that the move out inspection, you do that. And when that's done, that will create other tasks of the field work. Now, you may be using Renvine or Appfolio or Property Meld to coordinate that field work, and that's just fine. Those options are there, and you can do that. But either way, the idea is they are really different things. I got my inspection. I want to be able to print out my inspection, do it. It's a standalone thing. Or at the end of it, those results will go from there and automatically kind of create other tasks. So now, and I said most of the time your tasks are going to have one or the other. They're either going to have work order items or they're going to have documents, one or the other. Some exceptions may be like, let's say you were using this for, maybe your own maintenance people or something like that. You could have the field work and then you could have a document like create an invoice or work completed documentation or something like that. Okay. So there is some possibilities, but most people here, we're going to separate like our move out inspection from the list of work that needs to be done to remedy what was identified in the inspection. All right. All right.
Okay, we have a few questions here.
So Eddie asked, I think on the about a report that shows what's due for a periodic. I think the best that we have at the moment, if you go onto our kind of classic website under portfolio, under you'll see there's two columns there. There is the last activity date, and that's the last time a picture was taken. Or there is the last, I believe the field is called document date, and that's the last time an actual inspection report was completed. And you can do filters on that. And actually, from there, you could actually bulk create tasks from there. So that's probably the easiest way to do that. Okay. Okay. So David asked about how to add it to calendar and things like that. Yeah, and can it sync with Google Calendar? So there's two steps for that. So like when you're creating a task, you want to set the start time. Okay, you don't need to set the end time. If you set the start time, it's going to add an hour appointment onto your calendar. Okay, um, and then to sync it with Google Calendar, it's actually on our classic website under uh, profile. You Every user has got to authorize Google Calendar, and then anything you put on there, anything that's your set of that managed contact is going to automatically show up in your calendar. Okay. So Jackie asks here, is there a way from creating separate work orders for a single property? And so that's actually kind of a misconception that some people have. We create a single work order per activity type. So, like in this example that's up on the screen, those are all painting items. And so that's going to create a single work order for painting. Now, what you may want to do, and I'm going to actually kind of get to that, simplify the list. So, like the default setup is having many vendor categories, appliances, HVAC, flooring, cleaning, and maybe you want a simpler list. But it's going to create if you're using the Appfolio or any of the other work order creation, we create a single one based on the category. Okay. All right.
There's a question about I was just responding to that about syncing to an Outlook calendar from Kelly. So yes, you could also sync to an Outlook calendar. If you go, I'm gonna just grab the link there for you. If you go to the calendar view right here, if you go to contact group and you click on your little calendar icon on the left, it will give you the options to sync it to Outlook. If you have any questions on that or having any issues, just let our support team know, and we can help you with that.
Yeah, and uh, Denise asks, they've turned off the action item to task creation, but they want tasks still to be created. in Appfolio. Um, so I think we have that off on purpose because it was actually based on feedback because it was doing things like creating like people were just using us for scheduling inspections. They didn't want that to show as a service request in Appfolio. So kind of now this is not on for all kind of older customers, but we can turn it on. Um, but we do have a two-way sync with Appfolio. So even if you're just, if I would recommend turning the automatic task creation back on. And then even if you're editing the task in zInspector, so you're editing the list of items, that will actually auto edit in Appfolio. Okay. So that is one thing that happens there. Okay. Okay.
I think we answered everything.
Okay. All right. Let's keep going.
Oh, we just got another one from David. Can tasks be made recurring or automated to repeat yearly? For example, annual evaluations.
So how you're going to do it for at least for now is that we want a task to have at the end, you finish that task. And then at the end, you might have a review step or something like that. And then you would trigger a new task. So it's technically a different task. The idea is we want to complete that one and it's done, and then it can trigger a new one. So you can kind of create a kind of a ongoing process that way, but it's technically one creating another is how we're setting it up. Okay. All right. So let's kind of keep going back in. Someone asked if we add a task in a folio, does it transfer to zInspector? And this time, no, we are not doing it that way. We probably could, but we just thought people really didn't want it. They had so many stuff, and then that way they could kind of keep them separate. So the idea is what we're creating in zInspector based on your inspections, that will two-way sync. But ones that are separately created Appfolio, we do not sync them back to Appfolio or to zInspector. So, I mean, it's probably technically something we could do, but when we worked with a bunch of property managers early on that, that's what they preferred. Okay. And someone asked, how do you edit the action item list? Athena, can you just
I'm
post that direct link?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
working on that. I'm just copying
Okay,
it right now.
perfect. All right. All right. So let's kind of keep going on, try and kind of do this kind of like a little bit of an example. Okay. So like here would be kind of a general kind of workflow life cycle. And so what we're going to do is say, okay, we're going to have a move out, and then we're going to have repairs. And then maybe we want the tenant to do a move-in inspection. And from there, we may trigger a periodic inspection. Okay. So we're trying to kind of come up with some kind of simple kind of life cycle. Okay. And so here would be a kind of like, let's do a move out. Okay. And so we can create tasks in different ways. I got a slide covering up that, but here we can just say, let's create a task with a type move out. Okay. And then our process steps are going to be identified. Okay. And then the default documents will be defined. And then after we do the move out, then that's going to basically create kind of the essential repair task. Okay. So let's kind of do that. Now, unfortunately, because I was having those Zoom issues kind of early on, my whole screen set up. I'm now working on just my little laptop. So that's a little awkward. Okay. So sorry about that. All right. But um, and just kind of quickly, when I kind of go in here, the overview is all my company statistics. Properties at this point makes me pick a property, and then I can see everything for that property. Task gives me all my task level statistics. I also got tables task, and this is kind of our table view, our card view, and so forth. Okay, so those are probably based on this kind of call, kind of probably the some of the most useful links. But let's kind of go in here, pick properties. I'm just going to go into my my demo property and pick the property. Okay, and this is here is where I've kind of have everything here. And on this property, okay, here I've got tasks. and this doesn't have any tasks. Okay. And so let's go ahead and create a task. So I'm going to create a task. I'm going to be doing this inspection myself. I wanted someone else to do it. I could pick who's going to do it here. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick move out. And we're going to show you how these lists can be customized. And I'm going to pick my move out process. Okay. And if I had a kind of date and time or something like that, then I could go ahead and pick that time, and then that's going to go ahead and show up on my calendar. Okay, and then go ahead and create it. Okay, so now that went and created that move out task. And this here is the process associated with it. So here it's like, oh, I just want something in there. I'm acknowledging that I received notice from the tenant. Okay. So whatever that is, the tenant's actually moving out. So I've got that. Now, I know this canned response is not really the best email, but this is the best example. But if I kind of click this here, I've got this obviously not the right email. Okay. And then if you already have owner data synced in from other software, then the owner email, tenant email, that'll all be here. So you can quickly email them here as well. So then I could have an email go to the owner, same type of thing. I could send an email out to the tenant, and that could be basically whatever you want. And it can have lists, it can have images, it can have all those things. Okay. And then down below it, this one here, this is our kind of our document status icon, and it's checking the status of the move out. So this here task created a move out kind of document to go along with it. Okay. And so that document needs to get filled out. You can see it's kind of still in progress and required. And once it's filled out, it's going to kind of update that here. Okay. So I guess for starters here, let's just see if there's any questions on that. Okay. And let me know if you see anything there, Athena.
Yes. I thought you were looking at them. We have a question from Eddie. We use Rentvine aptly for team task management. Our inspection schedule is move in, and then after 90 days, they do the tenant guided inspection. If they do not complete it, they send an inspector in for them to do it, and then they do a renewal slash move out. The challenge is how can they tell um, they want somebody from their inspectors to be there at least once a year. So how can they tell when the inspections, which properties are past due for inspections?
Um, I think there's a lot in there. I'm not gonna. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to answer that kind of question right there. And that's kind of a lot, kind of on your kind of current setup. So it's probably hard for me to really answer.
If you
Um,
do in the processes we set up, like the demo ones, you could actually set up a process to cover all of that technically. And one
exactly.
and one of the examples we have there for the move-in, the process for the move-in would include all of those extra ones, and then it's just I don't know if you want to show that, Andy.
Yeah, I think yeah. So I'm going to just show you the cool core tools we have right now, and then let's kind of we'll keep going from there. But like on here, the main website, last activity. That's the last time a picture was taken. Last time there's a document was taken. You can use here. There's all kinds of search rules here, and then from there you could say like anything I didn't do in 2025 or anything like that, and then from there you can actually um, um, bulk create tasks right from there. So that's kind of a possibility. But for a lot of that process stuff on your inspections, you can do, if you like doing an apply, that you can do that, and that's great. And then we're gonna get to where how you could trigger an inspection, kind of an apply, and you or in zInspector. So that's coming. But then we're also, you could have to you could manage it somewhere else, get that inspection report. You'd have to just basically keep track of it there in terms of what you're actually kind of looking to do. Okay. All right. So, but what I want to talk about here is I've started this move out inspection task. I have these list of items in here, and I've got a document. Okay. Now I'm on the mobile app here on the left, and I'm going to simplify my screen so you can kind of see it a little better. Okay. And same type of thing. Um, okay, you can see here I've got the property selected and I have a task down here associated with it already. Okay. So I can hit move out. And then if you can see here, I've got my inspection document. I could tap that and I could actually just tap that move out and hit, proceed. And I'm going to now do this move out inspection. Okay. So here I'm going to mark it here as all satisfactory in this room. Okay. For my bathroom, I'm going to use my new AI feature and I'm going to open this up and say start. Say, hey, this ceiling has mildew all over it, and we need to repaint this ceiling. Everything else is looking good. The door looks good. The cabinet's fine. The flooring is in good condition. The light bulbs are all matched. The exhaust fan is working properly. So as I'm talking about things, I'm checking them off. Okay, and so you kind of see that's how our Z Assistant tool works. And then I'm going to hit end. Okay, and so that will, that's basically how you're doing inspections. We're not kind of covering here, really in inspections. Okay. But now it typically you're going to be going from one room to the other, but you can see here that's already kind of processed all those results. Everything was look good. Okay. But on my kind of ceiling has mildew and requires repainting, right? So that's what I talked in there. Normally it's going to already have a picture identified, but I was just like, pointing here at my computer, and so it didn't have a picture. But in this case here, I'll just go ahead and manually tap one. So I got one associated with it. I'm going to hit proceed. Okay. And I'm going to say complete this and sign it. Okay. So let's kind of sign this inspection and submit it and be done. And let's kind of go back here onto the website. So that was the idea as I started this move out inspection. I start my move out inspection. Okay. And then on the actual document, you can see here now that it's completed. Okay, it's submitted, and I can actually see that completed document. Okay, right there, and it's all linked already into that task. And you see this move out document status icon that is completed. Okay, so that part of the process is linked that I've completed with that. And what we typically want is you're going to have some steps after an inspection to say, hey, did someone such and such review it or so forth? And these could be assigned to different people. Like maybe you always have an office manager who's always assigning it, right? And then they could do that, for example. Okay. Now, if you kind of see this example here, you can have instructions in here. So if I kind of click this, okay, then those are kind of the instructions for this. You can make those instructions be essentially whatever you want. So you could have text, you could have images, you could have a link to a Google Drive video or anything like that. So that's going to be kind of an example of how you do the move out, when you do the move out inspection, okay, and how it links back into that actual task. Okay. So let me see if there's any more comments on that. Now, while if you notice here, we had our 123 demo street, we had our move out, okay? But now we have our painting task, okay? And this now was then automatically created, okay? And this is the process that I have for painting items, okay? So whenever painting items are done, this is the process that I'm going to use to check this off. You can have this as complicated or as simple as you want, okay? But this is kind of an example of how that's going to work, okay? So then now you can check that off. And then this is the items in here that were actually done. And actually, as something like, so let us know if that all makes sense, okay? So it's basically how one thing can create another. Now let me kind of keep going back into here. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to create a new task. And then let's say I'm going to um, do my move-in process. And on my move-in process here, okay, I'm just going to hit create. And this is where I might have things like, okay, I have a confirmed signed lease. Okay, I updated rent buying with everything. I might send them a custom welcome email. Okay, or here now I can request them to do a tenant completed inspection, for example. Okay, and then the idea is from there, I go through here, I maybe even notified the owner, and then here I'm going to schedule a periodic inspection down the road. So my move-in process, I wanna get it done and finished, and it's done, and then I'm gonna then recreate a periodic inspection down the road for when I'm gonna ready to do that. Okay, so that's, kind of how we're kind of thinking this is very new. There's still gonna be a bunch of improvements. We want your feedback on this, but this is kind of the first steps in it. All right. Let's kind of keep eye out for questions here. All right. Now, let's kind of keep going on in through here. Okay. All right. So we went through the painting example. We went through the kind of the moving example. All right. So now, kind of the next steps really to get started. Um, Really, you want to kind of, if you haven't already, go here, and this is going to customize kind of your main link and your incoming email link. There's other options on that down the road, but you want to do this one at a minimum, no matter what. This part right here kind of customizes your slug for your, kind of your settings right here. And then here, your company name. So you want to go ahead and customize that. And then here you want to customize what are your available task types. So like what do you want to show up as various options? Okay. And then we're going to say, okay, you can actually build your processes. Okay. And so, and now this is kind of a little bit what we're doing with kind of AI. So we, learning a lot from really our AI tool to kind of help you do inspections and really how to get very high quality results with that. We're actually using that to kind of create your first level processes. It's not going to do it all for you, but it's going to kind of get you started. Okay. So let's kind of like see how that will actually work. And so here I could do something like, um, okay, I can go and hit my processes. Okay. And I could go ahead and create a process. I could pick the, let's say, type of process that I wanted to have in there. And you could simply type in anything you want. Okay. So I can say, um, create a short, basic checklist on the steps needed to advertise a property for rent. Okay. And you can, and note, I am a residential property manager. Most of this we're probably going to handle already, but some of that could help. And you're going to generate this with AI. Now, most of our AI tools, we're kind of doing it as you go in the background. This particular one, we did it, so we're just going to let you prompt and wait. And you can see here, this is kind of like a short little list. And it says inspect property, take high quality photos, write a detailed marketing description, da, da, da. Or I'm going to hit try again. I'm going to say edit prompt, and I'm going to say create um, an extensive checklist, okay, and say generate what with AI, and you kind of get an idea of what it can do. Now, this is again just getting you started, and the idea is that you will still then totally make up your own process. So you can see here, this is going to be a much more kind of thorough one, and so that's may be here, okay, and that's good. Provide this, and if you like that one, then you hit save. And now when I'm in here, I'm still in the processes section, and I am now modifying this default process, and I can click something, I can change the order, I can simply click on an item and change what that is, or I want to add some other items and kind of add those items in here as well. Okay, you can add different types and things like that as well. But we're using kind of AI to generate your checklist and more kind of complicated things like tenant inspections and things like that. You probably have to manually add, but for some simple ones like um, this one, so let's see if kind of try this example out. So let's say a move out inspection. Okay, so I'm a residential property manager. Okay, list the core steps I need to prepare for me conducting a tenant move out inspection. Okay, and say generate with AI. And what we're doing here is not only generating these steps with AI, but if I hit if we have a template in that category move out, we're then automatically adding that as a required status item and adding that as a required document. Okay. So that's kind of some of the things we're doing to kind of help you hopefully get started with your processes.
And speaking of move outs, we have a question from Bill in the chat. Can you show us how you send the tenant the security deposit return after the move out inspection? There was another question above that.
There's different ways to do that. So you can do two different things. On the inspection itself, you can just edit costs right on the inspection. So if you just open up the inspection, open up the move out inspection, you can click it. Anything that has an action item will be at the top, and you can click it and add a cost. And you could just send a copy of that inspection report to them. So that is kind of one way to do it and kind of the more graphical way. The other way to do it is also on any inspection, there is an export option to XLS, and that will export anything you marked as like damaged into an Excel calculator. And then you could kind of do with it whatever you want in Excel and just kind of, modify it that way. So it kind of depends on your structure, which way you like to do it. But those are the two kind of core options that we have. Okay. All right. I'm getting a bunch of AI note takers here. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's kind of keep going through some of these other slides here. All right. Now, so building a default process with AI, we just kind of covered that, kind of showed you that. Now, these here kind of, we just showed you kind of the core way of how to create a task. Okay, so you can manually create a task. Okay, so that's one. You can also create tasks from inspection. So in an inspection, if you set an action, that will create tasks. Just like you could use it to create a work order on the system, that will create tasks. You also can add a web link, okay, to your website, and you could let people create tasks on your website. That's also a possibility. Or you could also have tasks created by having incoming email. Okay, so that is the kind of the four different kind of core ways we have right now that tasks can get created. Okay, and so um, and then this here uh, to do this, you're going to want to go here and kind of that's where we just showed that before, where you customize your company kind of slug. But we're doing some really cool things here when you get an email. So, like if you're synced with, let's say, the other software and Folios, Rent Binds, Rent Manager, or Rent Tech Direct, and we've got the tenant data and we got the owner data. When there's an incoming email, we're going to automatically assign that task to the right property. Okay, so that's going to happen automatically. If you're a really large company where you have portfolio managers, and you've got someone kind of managing a group, that any tenant can email into the same email inbox. It will automatically get assigned to the right property. It'll then automatically get assigned to the right property manager, and the right property manager will automatically get a notification email from that, all automatically. Okay, so those are some of the things there that we can, do that make it kind of very powerful and really dedicated to property management, that you're not going to just get through a standard kind of other CRM tool because it's specific for this. Now, we're also we kind of glossed over some things, but when there's an email that comes in, we're actually using AI to analyze the subject and determine what's the best one of your processes that matches that email. So you might have maintenance or emergency maintenance process or anything else. And based on the incoming subject, we try and identify, and we're going to pick the right process. But then, of course, you can change it. And this takes, a little bit more setup, but there's some custom domain options. But I did this more for our own company. We have all these different incoming boxes. So, like, we can give different emails out, but it's all through one task manager. And then we can have different rules. So that's going to trigger different processes based on that incoming email. Okay, so then we're gonna have another webinar that's kind of coming up in here in the schedule. Okay, and okay. So, okay, so um, Laxman Kumar asks, so let's say a task is created, has 10 items, and they do 5 of them. Okay, so and then there's 5 are left. What you want to do in that scenario is if they're just things you're not going to do on the 5 that are there, you just that you didn't do, you just delete them. And then it'll actually put it in the log that you deleted those items. So you have that history. Or if you want to, let's say, like defer them and put them on another task, you can check those 5 and use them. There's a little option there to move it to a new task. The idea is you finish that one, select the other ones, and either delete those ones you didn't do, or you move them to a new task and handle them somewhere else. Okay. And we will be sending out this recording. Okay. All right. And I think we're getting here near the end. So here's some of the next steps. We're getting started. Steps 1 to 3 on this presentation. Try and do those. Uh, Schedule a demo training session. We'll spend with you all the time that you want. This task and process structure, though, is very new. This is still kind of uh, pretty beta for us, so we want your feedback. So we're going to have a series of other webinars on this. We're going to kind of keep diving to more and more advanced features on this. We've got a really I think a cool one. This is actually a pretty kind of shorter webinar on the 20th called AI Executive Summaries. Now you're going to be able to have your own AI prompt automatically analyze any inspection reports. It's very cool, but, like, if you wanted to do something like, here, from my move out inspections, I want to analyze the report and write and generate an email for the owner automatically, right? Or maybe you have tenant move in inspection, you want to have a different um, AI prompt for analyzing that. So you can customize the prompts per inspection template and get different analyzed results accordingly. And then you can change the prompt on any one and get different results one off. So you have a different default prompt as well as change it anyone. So it's actually really cool. I think people are going to love that feature. Then we're going to have another one here on our communications inbox, and then there's a bunch of features, kind of tasks, bulk automations, and other things, some other scheduling. That's probably going to be in January. So we're trying to space these out here to make sure that we're doing them and prepping for them accordingly. So here's kind of our last slide here. If you want to sign up for the AI Executive Summary webinar, then you can do that right there. And that's going to be, I think we'll cover the most of that webinar in about 30 minutes. I think it's going to be a shorter webinar because it's really easy to use that feature. So you can scan that. And then if you just want a demo training session, one-on-one help, just scan that link and we'll do as many sessions with you as you want. Spend all the time with you as you want. Okay, so that is my last slide for here today, and I really appreciate this big group being on here. Okay, so thanks again for coming, everyone.